Namaste and Swagatam to all the panelists and our audience. Thank you for joining us to celebrate World Sanskrit Day, a day to really celebrate the biggest gift of our culture, as well as a day to propagate and pledge the relevance of Sanskrit in modern world. India as a nation is a treasure trove of cultures, the oldest and the richest in the world. All of us celebrate and accept the fact, but truly, very few are able to connect or understand the depth. And one of the biggest reasons is that somewhere the link to the culture, which is Sanskrit, has been ignored. And although Sanskrit connects us to our past scriptures and the huge knowledge base, why is it relevant now? This is what we would like to understand and discuss today. And it's our pleasure to have a panel from diverse backgrounds, both academically and culturally. With that, I'd like to invite our first speaker, Mr. Shashikant Joshi. He holds a computer science BTech degree from IIT Kharagpur and an MS degree from University of Minnesota, and has over 25 years of industry experience. His interest in Sanskrit goes back to his school days. He's an author of a very well-received book called Attitude Shift, Sanskrit Maxims for Contemporary Life and Leadership. He runs an live online session called Ancient Wisdom of Modern Times at learn.practicalsanskrit.com. And currently, practicalsanskrit.com website has over 4 million views, and Facebook page has over 34,000 followers. So welcome, Mr. Shashi, and let's hear from you.
Sure. So Anishaji, thank you very much. It is my pleasure to be here, and thanks for giving me the first opportunity to speak. It has its own good and bad aspects. Anyway, so I would like to share a small PowerPoint presentation, because in these COVID times, in 5 webinars a day, everybody's used to some kind of PowerPoint presentation. It will help me keep the time frame, as well as it will give some visual aid apart from my very photogenic face to the viewers. So let me just share a small PPT, and if you could just share that on the live. Let me know when it is shared.
It's shared, sir, now.
Okay. So hello everybody, my name is Shashikant Joshi, and it gives me immense pleasure to be in this panel talking about Sanskrit in the modern world. I want to briefly take you through my personal Sanskrit journey, and I might be a different breed because I'm a very technical person. All my education is technical, and still I'm deeply in Sanskrit, and now that breed is increasing. So this is Hitopadesh. It's a book physically printed in 1917, and this was given by my grandfather after my class 9. And this changed my life and view to Sanskrit completely. I had studied Sanskrit from class 5 till 9, and I was pretty good. I was a very good student, and in Sanskrit I was getting 100 or 99. That is perfectly fine, but I never knew that Sanskrit existed beyond my textbooks. So this one is Hitopadesh. It's an 11th century entry-level Sanskrit book based on Panchatantra, which was a 4th century book. And what we know of these two books is only from Amar Chitra Katha's animal stories for entertainment. But the purpose for these books was very different. This was to give practical wisdom, political wisdom, and governance wisdom to the 4 princes of a king. The wisdom from Panchatantra, Chanakya, Ramayana, Mahabharata, etc. is included in Hitopadesh, and the author says so, that I am compiling this as an entry-level book for children to give them practical wisdom. There's amazing story weaving and threading and giving the essence of Niti Shastra. We think that storytelling is a modern concept to give wisdom, but it's very, very old. And what we read in Amar Chitra Katha is just 5%. After my education school, I went to IIT Kharagpur. Interestingly, my elder brother had already joined IIT Kharagpur. So I had visited that institute twice. And I also joined IIT Kharagpur, not because my brother was there. I could have gone to any one of the IITs. My rank was 32. But the reason I chose Kharagpur was it was the one that resembled like an ashram. It was far away from any metro. The nearest metro was Calcutta, 3 hours. So it was an ashram setting where you could be as creative as you want. And if you got bored, then you had to create your own entertainment. And that is, I think, is very important for anybody to succeed anywhere. You should not get bored. If any person gets bored, then you will not be able to succeed in life because you're not able to create something out of that loneliness. And interestingly, now my son is also in IIT Kharagpur. Now he's in a fourth year electronics. After IIT, I went to US and I was a technical consultant. And there I realized, along with a lot of NRIs, while we are in India, we take our culture, heritage, past, and all these things for granted. But when you're outside India, you realize that, hey, you didn't pay attention, you don't know what to do, and how do you tell your children what is this, what is that, why, all these things, right? So in that quest, I started a cultural magazine, a monthly magazine, for about a year and a half, because I had my busy work life as well. And these are just some of the issues there. I also created an audio CD. This was in the 90s. Late 90s, early 2000s. And not much of technology there. So it was a big task to create this audio CD based on the first chapter of Hitopadesh. And the whole story was narrated in English. I also created a Hindu prayer book for the local temple because I found people either did not know the proper words for the mantra, stotra, and artis, or if they knew the words, they did not know the meaning. So this was also on the way along with this. When I returned back to India in 2007, this was an informal talk I gave at Bar Camp, Bangalore, in IIM Bangalore. And Bar Camp is a very technical get-together. And everybody had a extremely technical talk. And mine was that once you have figured out how to earn the money and don't know what to do with life, then come to my session, the lesser known aspects of Kama Sutra and Panchatantra. It was very well received. I was supposed to speak for only half an hour and people didn't move for 2.5 hours. So that was very, very interesting. Then I started a Practical Sanskrit blog, a website, and today it has over 4 million visitors so far. Then I started a Facebook page, which I think is the largest page by a single person, not an organization. Chinmaya Mission has, I think, the largest following among Sanskrit, but that is a whole mission. I'm just a person doing part-time. Inspired by the very well-received Practical Sanskrit Facebook page, I wrote a book called Attitude Shift, and it was extremely well-received. It is Sanskrit maxims for contemporary life and leadership. So it is about how you can use the wisdom in workplace, but we are all leaders. So even in life, even at home, somebody looks up to you. So as long as somebody looks up to you, you are a leader. And my latest venture has been now online classes and live sessions at learn.practicalsanskrit.com. Every Saturday 10 a.m. I have a ancient wisdom, modern times session. So Sanskrit is a way of thinking. And again, here I'm going to give you just very brief things about why or what is so interesting in Sanskrit. One of the very first reasons I got involved in Sanskrit on Facebook was where I somewhere read about somebody had posted the 3 different yoga, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga. And there it was like, you have the rights on your action, but not the rights on your fruits. And I think that's the biggest mistake that everybody is doing on the internet and in English writing. Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. It literally means that you have control over your actions, but no control over the fruits of your actions. It's not the rights. You have the rights. You cannot escape the fruits. Because if it was not so, you could do crime and say, hey, I don't get the results of the fruit, right? Of the actions. In these COVID times, there's a big dilemma in every country. Do you save the people or do you save the economy? Interestingly, Kamandakiya Niti, the very beginning, like 5th or 6th shlok itself, says that the king protects the people and the prosperity is brought about by the people. So if you have to decide between protecting the people or the prosperity, you should always choose the people, because the people who brought prosperity earlier will bring it again. But if you don't have your people, who will bring the prosperity? Chanakya Sutra is about politics and governance, and it's a very long work. It's different from Arthashastra and Chanakya Niti. And very briefly, in 6 words, it covers the entire gamut of leadership and management. And I'll just very, very briefly mention that because we don't have too much time. He says, how does the society get sukha? What is the basis of sukha? The basis of sukha in the society is if everybody follows their dharma, which is duty, not religion. So if everybody does their duty, then there is sukha in the society. What is the basis of everybody doing their duty? Is artha. If everybody gets the resources to live, they get paid well, they are taken care of the needs, then they will do their duties. What is the basis of good artha? Basically is the resources, the good economics, right? So what is the basis of good economy is the indriya rajya. Rajya is also equal to king. Then it says, what is the basis of a good king? Which is indriya jaya, which means self-control. And why is it important? Just like they say in the famous movie Sholay, if somebody can save you from Gabbar, it is Gabbar only. Who can police the police? So the king or the leader has to be indriya jaya, self-control, because nobody else can control that person, right? And what is the basis of self-control? Which is vinaya. Vinaya is not just humility, it is special training, and humility is part of that. And then it says, what is the basis of vinaya? It says vriddhopaseva, vriddha upaseva. Vriddha is one who has grown, not just in age, that is just one aspect of growing, but who has grown in a particular field. And upaseva is what you would call apprenticeship. So vriddhopaseva is apprenticeship. So when you do an apprenticeship to a great person who is grown in their field, you learn, and you also learn the vinaya. From there, you also learn the self-control because you're watching that person, right? From there comes a great leadership, from which comes great economy, from which comes everybody doing their duty, and from which comes sukha in the society. Vidur Niti is extremely, extremely about management and leadership, and I plan to offer some courses on this as well. Panchatantra and Hitopadesh, they are full of worldly wisdom and niti. This very famous Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which comes from Mahopanishad, which everybody knows and everybody hammers today. They do not realize how it can be misused as well. And in the context of Hitopadesh, there was a deer who was trapped by a jackal, and the jackal says, I want to be your friend. And the deer's friend crow says that you guys are born enemies, you cannot be friends. And then the jackal says that, hey, this is mine, that is other. This kind of thinking is narrow-minded people, Magnanimous people say, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So there's nobody, mine or other like that. What this was saying was, and obviously the jackal traps the deer and tries to kill it. So what he's saying is that, there are times when people will misuse your own great thoughts against you itself. So Panchatantra and Hitopadesh are extremely important for today's youth to realize what is happening in our society and the world. And Nyaya and Yoga, they are logic and philosophy of a very high level. I mean, unless you delve into that in the textual parts of it, you will not even realize how beautiful and highly developed logical thought systems they are. I also want to give just a few examples of how powerful words are formed in Sanskrit and the way of thinking in Sanskrit. So here are just 5 words. Sansar, we usually mean that world, right? And if somebody says what's the literal meaning of world, W-O-R-L-D, there is nothing more to go for. But sansara means sarati sarati iti sansarati, sansarati iti sansara. That which keeps on slipping away or slithering away is sansara, right? By the very fact that it is sansara, there is nothing like, I will conquer the world, the world is in my fist, dunya meri muthi mein types. There is nothing. It is like sand that will slip out of your fingers. Jagat also means that which has movement, that which keeps on moving and moving. So now imagine that the word for the universe is Jagat, and this word also is found in the Vedic times. So that means even before all this science, they had a word for the world, that which keeps moving, right? We call it today as the change is the only constant. The creation of the word itself has the concept in it. Sharir, which we think just means the body, means shiryate iti shariram, that which shears, or that which ghiste hai, like in Hindi we say. So the skin keeps on rubbing off, right? So every day we are just going towards our own destruction. This body that is going towards its own destruction slowly. So why the extra attachment to that? The body is very important, because anything you can do is with the body, but it is going to go away. So one should realize that. Vyakti we think of as a person, right? But the word Vyakti means a manifestation. Abhivyakti is expression, right? So the Vyakti is the expression, an expression of what? Is of that divine principle. In the very word for a person, we say that every person is an expression of that divine. Vidhur is a widower. So a person whose wife has died. Literally, Vidhur means the one who has no access, right? Without an access, without a dhuri is a Vidhur. So the importance of the woman and the wife in the household is there in the word itself. The man who loses his wife is without his bearings, so to speak, right? Wisdom through the story is not a new famous books like Our Iceberg is Melting, modern books, where penguin colony is there, and through the story of that, corporate wisdom is given to CXOs. And I used to always think that if you are a CXO, you should not need a story. I could give you a dry 5-word idea and you should be able to make sense out of it. You are a CXO, that up high. And still, they also need stories like penguins figuring out how to save their colony. Here's one little thing I want to give. Don't worry about this. I know, it's too much text. Don't worry. All I want you to focus is on the top left in the red is a shlok where the first part is all the consonant is sir. The sound is sir. Second part is only ya sound. Third part is only la sound. Fourth part is only sh sound. This is mastery at the grammar of the language. And you might say, what's the point of this? This is useless exercise. What does it even mean in today's world? There is so much more important things to do in life. And the beauty is that nowadays in computer science, they have competitions for code obfuscation, which means write a code such that nobody can figure out what the code does, but it actually runs and does something. So these kind of things are also mentioned in Sampanandaji's book itself, The Wonder That is Sanskrit. The shlok above has ja sound, then ta sound, then bha and ra sound. So only one sound per 8 consonant continuous sounds. The one below is just the the sound, nothing else. The consonant is only the. These are like amazing feats of the language, and it shows the mastery of the grammar. And one would say, why is it important? So as I was mentioning, the code obfuscation competition. This is a C code, which is a perfectly valid code. And you could look at it and say, big deal, what does it do? Is it even valid? Interestingly, this is the output of this code. And these competitions happen every year. Here is another piece of code which even programmers will not be able to make sense as to what is this. And it just prints out the map of India. This is the smallest program that actually plays a chess by the international chess rules, right? And this person, Oscar Toledo, has won it 5 times the competition. So what I'm saying is that, even today, when somebody masters the language, they've created the mundane solutions and then they show off their mastery. And such wonders are also there in Sanskrit. And very, very important in today's times is it important to learn Sanskrit? Why is it being forced down the throats of students in schools? So back in 2014, there was one news that came out, I think in November of 2014, that Sanskrit was replacing German as a third language in Kendriya Vidyalaya. I'm not going to go in the politics of it. This was a totally different thing. But just if you take that, should we be teaching Sanskrit? Should we be learning Sanskrit at all? Right? Just purely as an objective study of the matter. So let's look at it. Who will benefit if you, rather than Sanskrit, you study German or Chinese or whatever other language that you might think? So learning Chinese or German will help China or Germany, not India, right? It's not being promoted for India's interest. After 9/11 in US, there was a surge in teaching and learning foreign languages. A lot of Middle Eastern languages being learned, a lot of Asian languages being learned and taught and required, because they wanted to make sure that they could first intercept and then interpret foreign language messages going around. Learning of German or any other language in India is not done for any Indian purpose, right? Language carries its culture with it, and culture is not genetic. The culture of this land is its history and must be taught without any narrow thinking from either side. We should not be extremely proud as one side of the politics, or extremely ashamed or shaming thing on the other side of the politics. It's not a matter of politics at all, right? Every other country teaches its past and history with great pride. English books have Shakespeare. Chinese courses will have some Chinese thinkers. French, if you learn French, then you will have some French authors in there. But sadly, in the CBSE board books in Hindi, I found that there were some stories translated from Russian. Now, as if we don't have enough literature in Hindi, and I can only speak about Hindi, I don't know other language books per se, and it might be a situation in the other languages also. Now, similarly, in Sanskrit books, I found essays on television. Now, you don't want to learn Sanskrit just to say this is television and you can see from far away and all. That's not the purpose of Sanskrit, because what Sanskrit brings with it is a 3,000 plus years of wisdom, practical wisdom, philosophical, spiritual, science, and everything, language, expression, life, right? When I was studying in school, we had things like Satyam Vada Dharmam Chara and Matridevo Bhava, Pitridevo Bhava. Even if we did not understand the whole thing in class 8, we at least got exposed to the idea and the subhashits that were there. That is what drew me to the Sanskrit language, that beautiful thoughts, right? And learning other languages while learning ours as well. We can do both, right? So when a German or a Swedish person learns English, they learned it just like any other subject, right? They don't think that it is superior to their own mother tongue. Yeah, just one more language you have to learn if you have to go out of your country and do some international business or whatever. So you just pick English, just like any other subject. And all major universities in the world, they have a Sanskrit department, right? There must be some good in it that everybody is trying to learn or at least teach, right? Forget about Sanskrit. We in India are neglecting all languages, at least all Indian languages, right? Even mother tongue. Kids are not, learning it as a proper learning. Parents are not enforcing. Everybody is just talking in English, and just because you got an accent doesn't mean that your English is good. I mean, even English as a language is being neglected by students. So that's not a very good outlook towards language itself. Forget about Sanskrit. Now, will learning a language make a difference, right? So if I learn one more language, does it make any difference? Now, did France make progress by learning Mongolian or Sweden by learning Spanish? Language is just that. I mean, it's just another tool. English is important. I don't deny that. It's an important tool because you get access to all the modern knowledge instantly. You don't have to translate things. Most of the things which were originally in German, French, or Swiss, they've all been translated in English already, the scientific I'm talking about. So English is a great tool, and it's a great tool to be a world citizen, but just let it be there till there only, right? We still watch Indian movies, Hindi movies or Tamil or Bengali or whatever our mother tongue might be, and we still like Indian songs, right? If we really want to learn from other countries, we should actually pick up their work ethics, right? That would be a great thing to pick up from other countries. Language connects one to its culture. It's very, very important not to get exposed to Sanskrit. It is our culture. It is the connection to the culture. Now, is Sanskrit less of a language linguistically? I mean, is that the reason we should not learn it? This is a very vast topic, and I'm not going to take too much time here, but all I can say is that the discovery of Sanskrit by the British and the Germans and the entire Europe led to the entire area of science called linguistics, the study of language that we know today. Without that, there would have no department of linguistics in the world. Its perfection can be gauged by the fact that it does not need a key to pronunciation. Its sounds are scientifically arranged in phonetic groups of mouth locations, and there are a lot of other things out there, so I'm not going to take too much time on this one. Is Sanskrit an artificial language? That is also said in the charge against Sanskrit. It is an artificial language. The name Sanskrit itself means perfected, so it must be an artificial language. But it is not. Why? People say Panini created Sanskrit in 500 BC. Panini only described the language he heard around him. in 4,000 rules in such a genius way that 2,500 years later, computer scientists used the same approach to define the computer language grammars for today. And there is no exaggeration in it. I have computer science degrees and I can vouch for that. The way the Sanskrit grammar is defined by Panini is exactly the same way, and a subset is used to define the modern computer languages. Right? Exactly the same way. Now, that's a huge intellectual achievement to come with a generative grammar just because you want to describe the language with the least amount of rules and words. And when this is 500 BCE, the whole world was fighting petty battles for survival. And here we have some guy saying, oh, let me figure out how is this language, what are the patterns, what are the rules, how can I describe it completely in as little words and as little syllables as possible, right? It's very, very cryptic, obviously. Sanskrit is not an artificial language created by Panini because the language before Panini, what we today call as Vedic Sanskrit, is not very different from the Lokik Sanskrit. It's not like, you all of a sudden have different sounds and different words and different ways of forming verbs and nouns, nothing like that. Some usage from the Vedic time has stopped after Panini, but that's pretty much it. And what is it about Sanskrit that is well suited for computers? This is a pet thing. I mean, you must have heard about Briggs' research paper in NASA, and that's why Sanskrit is the greatest language and all. People have not even understood what that is all about and who was Briggs, and very few people have actually seen the original paper, but you will find chest thumping and all over the world. But as I mentioned, the main reason for scientists, linguists, and computer and artificial intelligence scientists to be interested in Sanskrit linguistics, grammar, and works is very, very real. And it is to learn from it ways to express succinctly, learn how to represent knowledge systems, and process natural languages for translation, which is happening a lot now, right? Text to speech and Google Translate and all these things. They are even suggesting in the academic circles to use Sanskrit as the central node for translation, which means if you want to translate from language A to language B, why not first translate into Sanskrit and then you can translate to any other language. So Sanskrit being the nodal, central node kind of thing in the translation hub. And why would they choose that, one might say? Because the very grammar of Sanskrit is almost exactly like the grammar of computer languages. And that is the best way of processing through a machine, right? All of Panini's rules are of the type A becomes B if C is true. That's how the entire grammar is defined. A becomes B if C is true, right? And that's how the computer language is also defined. And then this one is a very touchy topic, but I'm just going to touch it. Sanskrit is the language of oppression and oppressors. This is being said out in the media, and a lot of people have no answer for that. There is also a posse of bright, motivated people that will tell you that Sanskrit is a reminder and remainder of Brahminical oppression beyond compare, of the caste system and whatnot, right? So is the English language, the reminder and the remainder of British colonialism. But consider for a moment, for centuries, the whole world was going crazy trying to get to India. They discovered America trying to get to India, to do commerce with it, the only powerhouse of the world economy till 1857. You don't build empires just on spirituality and religion. You need practical wisdom, knowledge, science, and of course, the policy can be guided by spirituality. And you don't need to concoct spiritual eclectic wisdom to oppress the people. Like the Sanskrit being the language of oppression or oppressors. You don't need to come up with all these fancy things just to oppress people. The West, the entire Europe, and the imperialistic powers did so with the simple sword and gun. They didn't develop some fancy thing that, hey, we are doing good for you, don't worry, we got this English language which will, emancipate. Nothing like that. Guns and swords. And if Sanskrit should be shunned because some priestly class misused their power while speaking in Sanskrit, then please don't forget that Hitler spoke German while doing what he did. And communism and suspension of liberty happened while the premier spoke Chinese. In the South and Central Americas were butchered while the cross was held as a witness, and the Middle East was bloodied while Quran was used as a guide. My point is, get over the hogwash. Sanskrit is a great language of highest order, has great wisdom in it, very thoughtfully honed over millennia. If one shuns it, the loss is not of Sanskrit, but your own. You don't need to master it. Just get exposed to its glory even a little bit. And that's what I have been trying to do since 2009, part-time, and now more full-time with practicalsanskrit.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Shashi ji.
you.
Thank you for touching upon some of the best written, hundreds of texts that were written hundreds of years back, yet so relevant on topics like leadership, strategy, self-control, management. It was great insights, especially on the computer science bit as well. I'd like to invite our next speaker. She's Preeti Upala. She's joined us from United States. And it's pretty late there, so thank you for joining us on this special day. Preeti is a former investment banker turned thought leader, a media personality, and a Hollywood entrepreneur. Global peace dominates the forefront of the former Miss India International's life purpose. And it is what drives her to connect people together through a series of spiritual endeavors and media productions. Her weekly spiritual radio show, The Eternal Hour, can be heard on iHeartRadio and a popular YouTube channel called The Preeti Experience. She's a certified Dharma ambassador and she speaks internationally on topics of Dharma, culture, and spiritualism. Preeti is passionate about global cultural issues, involved in several philanthropic activities, and her life dharma is to be a global thought leader and ambassador for diplomacy and potential international liaison between governments. Thank you, Preeti. Would love to hear from you.
Namaste, everyone. My name is Preeti Upala, and I am so honored to speak here at this amazing event on this very special day. I'm thrilled that we have a day like this because there are so many beautiful things, especially that come from our culture that even we don't really recognize or give it the reverence that it deserves. So having a International Yoga Day or the World Sanskrit Day is, I think, essentially important, and so honored to connect with all of you today. As the moderator very kindly was explaining my bio, I sort of was in the corporate world in Australia, and then I gave all of that up to move to in New York and then LA here in America, and to work in the film business and in arts and the creative space. But my dharma has evolved since then. I still obviously am very much tied in to Hollywood because I think it's a great platform to actually do dharmic work, which is what my whole thing is about anyway. But it's been quite a journey, and I find myself very much immersed in Vedic culture and our civilizational history, and sort of speaking and writing about it extensively because I've opened the Pandora's box of all the biases that are out there and the phobias and so on. And it's all very interesting. I think all we can do is just do our best. And I think if you come from truth, everything will always be beautiful in the end. So I just wanted to, I'll keep it short and sweet this evening. So I wanted to talk about, obviously the topic is Sanskrit, Deva Bhasha, the language of gods. If COVID has taught us anything, it has taught us to really question and ask us ourselves, what kind of world do we want to live in? And what kind of frameworks do we want running our planet? Because I think what we have seen in the last 5 or 6 months is that the way we were going is not sustainable, and it just simply it is not the way for the future. I think we are cultures or the world at large is forced to ask ourselves, where is all this leading to? Which brings me to my next point. Um, there are some ideologies, thankfully, that actually can show us a way out. And in fact, in these turbulent, challenging times, perhaps they're the only frameworks that actually, kind of rise and elevate themselves. And that one of them, of course, is Sanatan Dharma. I really think that it is showing the whole world how it is the path for the future for humanity. Now, central to Sanatan Dharma is Sanskrit, the language of the god. Sanskrit is a sculpted language, and it is sculpted to perfection. It's sort of a miracle that this language has come to be when you think about sort of what has been said about it, right? It's the oldest language in the world, and it's the root of all the other languages, not just in India, but around the world at large. And it's so fascinating to think that you have Germanic languages and languages in Finland and in very exotic parts of Europe that actually stem from Sanskrit. So we're worlds apart, but nothing wavers the connection, I think, to source. And it's great that by and large people really recognize that. And it seems like it's eternal. It's been there forever. And I hope if we do what we are supposed to do in honoring and treasuring it, it will remain until hopefully the very end of time. It's a scientific language, of course. It's the only AI friendly language out there. And even NASA, we have, I'm sure, read and heard about all these amazing reports that institutions like NASA come out and say things about Sanskrit, and now we're finding that it helps you concentrate better. There are universities and schools in the UK and in other parts of Europe that do chanting Sanskrit mantras to really activate the brain, to promote focus, concentration, and just mental agility and ability. And this is a wonderful thing. And I'm just thrilled that people are recognizing all of this. I think it's so important to uh, really revive it, though, both around the world, of course, but it really starts from here. It starts from India, because if just because it's lasted for so long, it doesn't mean we can take anything for granted. I think we live in very interesting times, and we really must honor and treasure this gift that we have. It's a gift that we give to the world, but it's really a gift to ourselves as well. Now, I was exploring a little bit on what spiritual masters have said about Sanskrit, because I think it's always fascinating to see, interesting things that have been said by enlightened souls, enlightened beings. And I know that a lot of the audience here might be fans and admirers and followers of the great Sri Aurobindo. So I wanted to look up what he had said about Sanskrit, and it turns out that he was quite a great admirer and somebody who had very high hopes and thought very highly of Sanskrit. So I just want to read a few things that I found. Now, there's no doubt that the Sanskrit language had a very deep and profound impression on Sri Aurobindo. It might even be said that he approached this ancient language as if he was reacquainting himself with an old friend. And I think that's a beautiful way to put it. He saw it as something so familiar. He was obviously familiar already with the European classical languages, but he placed this ancient he placed the ancient and the classical creations of Sanskrit well above, in the front ranks among the world's great languages. And even personally, Sri Aurobindo had given in his writings, I think, some glimpses of the effect that Sanskrit had on him. For example, in the book On Himself, he speaks about when I first read Om Shanti 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 of the Upanishads, it had such a profound effect on me. Now, this is a very, I guess, a simple mantra, if you can call it that, but just saying it in its proper form and tone can have this incredible um, effect on people. And that's why it's obviously chanted or spoken at any spiritual occasion. So he was obviously very moved and inspired by Sanskrit. Now, another great spiritual teacher was the mother. Now, the mother had some very interesting takes on Sanskrit. She says that Sanskrit opens the door to all the other languages of India, and I think that this is indispensable. But the ideal would be that in a few years, we have a rejuvenated Sanskrit as the representative language of India. That is, some kind of spoken Sanskrit that will be the link language and that will be the official language. Because Sanskrit is behind all the other languages of India, and that's why it should be structured that way. Because today, English happens to be the language of this country, and I'm talking about India here. And that's great for international relations and business and so on, but it's a bit abnormal considering it's not native to India. I just think that one should always begin with one's own, what is one's own. And the issue is, once we start talking about what should be the national language, everyone quarrels because they all think that their native language should be the national language. Well, this is where Sanskrit has a solution, because it's the most ancient language. I think no one can deny its place. So if you do have it as a national language in some form, I just don't think that there would be the quarreling and sort of the divisiveness, because everybody, I think, accepts the Sanskrit for what it is. So that was the mother's view on it, and I just think that she hit a nerve, or she touched on the pulse of the issue. Um, as somebody who's traveled quite a bit, and I speak 5 languages myself, I do think that language is how we communicate with each other and the world, and also how we project ourselves, how we present ourselves to the world. And I just think that Sanskrit is a symbol of of dharma, right? And all that is good in our culture, and it's reflected. It's sort of a manifestation of all of that. So I just think it's so important that we, at some point, think about making this some sort of, maybe a national language in some form, and maybe even the basics should be taught to all children. And then if you want to go beyond the basics, of course, that's optional. But I think at least a very little part of it, I think every Indian should proudly learn about it, and should at least be able to speak um, a few sentences, because I think even today, even Hindi has sort of that sort of stature. Even in the South, a lot of people speak Hindi. So I don't see why that shouldn't be Sanskrit instead. And nobody would object to Sanskrit, of course, because it's the root of all the other languages. And, I just sort of think about this study of when you think about linguistics and Indology and so on. I think there's such a hot debate that we've had honestly for decades about this whole Aryan migration myth, theory, and so on. Well, one of the facets, or one of the points of evidence that sort of busts that myth, of course, is the language aspect of it. When you think about uh, where does this all begin, right? It does begin with Sanskrit, and It's always Indo-European, it's never European-Indian. So we know the root language and then where did it spread to. And among many other factors, it is a big part of why our culture, the Vedic philosophy, Sanatana Dharma, all of this amazing culture and wisdom was native and indigenous to India. It wasn't transferred to us from some place up in Central Asia or the steppe areas or Europe. So I think it's something that we need to know as Indians, our own history. And I think when we follow the journey of Sanskrit, it sort of takes us um, through the history of the civilization in a way. So I think it's so important that we really know enough about it, right? Because I think sadly this sort of myth is still out there, and there are people who just don't want to accept a different narrative. I actually had a really interesting experience recently where I had a conversation with a spiritual teacher, and he happened to be American, but he had spent much time in India and in Nepal, and we were talking about Sanskrit, and he made such a poignant point, and I thought I'd share that with you because I think that um, what he said was he was very observant, and I think it was very apt. He said, you know, of course, the mantras are very powerful, they're primordial sounds, they awaken consciousness within us, they actually they lead us to ultimately gain moksha. I mean, it's sort of a pathway to that over time, and it's great that people are chanting. But the point he wanted to make was, these days even the priests, even scholars, they chant these mantras so fast, and they just their consciousness, or they are mindful of obviously the mantra and the pronunciation, but uh, their focus is really just on the chanting. And I think what they're missing is the pause between the two verses. It's the space between the sounds, it's the space between the words, which is powerful. That's where the magic happens. And I think there's too many people who are chanting and not stopping and pausing, because that's where it all happens. And I think it's the pause between the sounds where one can anchor in to source and really feel the effect of the word and the sound itself. So I just thought, as a Caucasian person, as a non-Indian, for him to sort of notice that and make a point, to me, I just thought he was on something, and I appreciated him for sharing. I just thought that it's something, and it's really the space between the sounds, which is where you can anchor into Ananda, which is bliss. So I really feel that Sanskrit is India and India is Sanskrit, and I think we have a duty to preserve and uphold this incredible gift. And it really is the language of the gods. It does have the ability to help us on our spiritual path, to awaken consciousness within us, to be an anchor for bliss. The sound itself can also help us go deeper and find that inner peace. It's extremely peaceful to just even sit in the presence of it, and sit in maybe even silence with the sound in your mind. But it's our job to uphold this, also obviously to showcase it to the world, but more important, I think we need to cherish it, because sadly, within no if you blink, sometimes you might lose it all. And I think that we have done, somehow it's been a miracle that it's been upheld, right, in also in a very pure form. It's thousands of years later, here it is, and every university in the world has a Sanskrit department, and there's probably more non-Indians who speak it and study it. And I'm involved with the Hindu University of America here, and you can do a PhD in Sanskrit. You can do a master's in Sanskrit. So it's wonderful that it really does need to go more mainstream, because when I think of other languages that are mainstream, and you think about, when you sort of compare them, you just think, well, what's going on here? So I think it's our duty to come together as a people, as a country, as a civilization, to be proud of this amazing language, and also do our best to showcase it to the world, but more importantly, to really cherish, preserve, and honor it. Because I think it is the link language for the universe, in many ways. And I think it is going to be the one that keeps us all together. In some ways, it's a unifying force. So I just wanted to share my thoughts with you on that. I hope you enjoyed my talk, and I look forward to engaging with you some more. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak and share. And I really hope I get the opportunity to speak on this platform again. Namaste.
Thank you, Preeti, for really being an ambassador and torchbearer of Indian culture. Very interesting on how, you threw light on how Sanskrit can become the national language of the country, because truly it is the root language for so many other languages and cultures in India. And, Sanskrit can and must become a global phenomena, and we hope that you can take this forward through your work. Thank you once again. Next up, we have Vasundhara Das. Vasundhara Das is a multifaceted, multilingual personality successfully straddling many roles. She's well known for her skills in both the film and music industry in India. When it comes to singing, she has trained in Hindustani classical music from an early age and has made her mark in popular music scene in India and many hit songs in Indian films. She has also been collaborating on many independent music projects over the span of her career so far. Vasundhara and her partner, Roberto Narain, run Drum Jam, one of the organizations that pioneered the use of drum circles for corporate training, team building, and community building at corporations, communities, schools, and colleges. So welcome, Vasundhara. We really look forward to hearing your take at Sanskrit with your musical background.
Thank you, Anisha. Thank you to Language Curry for inviting me to be part of this amazing conversation. Of course, I want to talk about Sanskrit through my experiences and my exposure to it through the world of sound. When we think of Sanskrit, I think in India, a few common phrases come to mind. Scientific, systematic language, the mother of Indian languages, classical language, the language which helps students score high marks in their exams. And sometimes we even refer to it as a dead language. Whatever each of us relate to in terms of our reference to Sanskrit, none of us are actually untouched by it, even in the modern world. Let's look at these phrases and try to understand how they came to be. Sanskrit is called the mother of Indian languages, and it's also called a classical language because of its linguistic relevance. We've been already talking about that through the conversations of our previous speakers today. Sanskrit has played a hugely relevant part in the birth of most Indian languages. Vedic Sanskrit's origins date back to approximately 1700 to 1200 BC and is believed to have been generally spoken as a language in the Indian subcontinent since that time. Classical Sanskrit came into being around 500 BC, between 500 BC and 1000 AD, after which the grammar systems which were written by Panini, which we've had some references to in our previous talks, and the great epics of Indian mythology, the Ramayana and Mahabharata, were created. Sanskrit is considered a scientific language. Again, we've had references to how it's relevant in software and in scientific studies today. But really, let's go to the basis of it. Why is it considered a scientific language? Fundamentally, that's because of the way it's systematically structured. If one studies deeply the phonetic arrangement and classification of sounds in Sanskrit, one can uncover its secrets relating to vibration and even healing. Also, Sanskrit has exhaustive ancient texts written in ancient times, such as, on topics as widely ranging as medicine, for example, the Charaka or Sushrita Samhita, mathematics, Aryabhatiya, politics, Arthashastra, moral teachings and wisdom, Panchatantra, philosophy, Bhagavad Gita, astronomy, Parashara Tantra, performing arts, Natyashastra, law, Manusmriti, so much more. And really, the list is so exhaustive. But when you ask a student these days in India why they opt to take Sanskrit in school or college, to a large extent you'll hear that it's because there's a much better chance to score higher marks in Sanskrit than in any other opted language. So students end up learning grammar, and some of them even study classics depending on the level of Sanskrit studies that they opt for. But the actual essence and the conversational aspect of the language doesn't get that much attention when we study it in school. I've also heard that Sanskrit often is referred to as a dead language, and I'm not sure that I completely understand why. But I have to say, the moment I uploaded the poster for today's event on Facebook, on my Facebook page, the first comment I received, and I'm not kidding, was dead language. And I remember instinctively, immediately, I felt so sorry for the person who wrote that, because he will never truly open his mind to the secrets and mysteries held in this beautiful language. And that's such a huge loss. I'd like to take a moment to ponder a little bit about the origins of language. Before language, or more specifically before words came into being, one can imagine that communication happened with the usage of sound. Sound is a deeply interesting topic for me. As a musician, my work too originates with sound. When I think of sound, it takes me to first the voice, our voice, and a vibration. How do we humans produce sound? With the use of our vocal cords and our body? And many of us, maybe we don't have the time to kind of think about the sounds that we can produce with our own vocal cords. And for a long time, that person was me. I didn't really correspond or correlate language to sound. Professor Sampadananda Mishra, who's going to be talking a little later in this session, or Sampad as I often affectionately refer to him, talks with great passion about the correlation between Sanskrit, sound, and music in his wonderfully put together annual course called Spandana, which he hosts at the Sri Aurobindo Society. I've been to one of those, and it has truly changed my life. Here's a simple explanation of what I have come to understand. What is sound? Sound is everything. Sound is vibration. Vibration creates pressure. Pressure creates force, which makes matter move. And this movement of matter creates energy. And everything around us is basically a flow or a movement of energy. When we look at creation, it can be said that sound was the first most potent force just following the Big Bang. Sound was the means by which the universe organized matter in the first phase of creation. The quantum fluctuations that occurred immediately after the Big Bang became amplified because of the sound and caused matter to go to different places in the universe, organized by the huge sound pressures that would have existed at that time. So how does any of this correlate to Sanskrit? Every time we make a sound from our voice box is basically vibration. If you touch, you will feel it. Every syllable we utter is a product of vibration. Vibration is everywhere. It permeates and connects everything. Sound in Sanskrit is called nada. Nad means to sound, and nada means stream. So when one looks at this in the context of Nada Yoga, you may consider that one of the most effective ways to a meditative state is to tune in to one's own internal sound stream. If you're wondering what I'm talking about, just plug your ears with your fingers for 30 seconds and listen to your own body, and you will hear your own inner sound. Nada Yoga goes into upper sound of harmonic structures. In Nada Yoga, we talk about the bindu, or the still point, the nada, or the stream, and the bija, or the seed. So coming back to Sanskrit, according to Vedic tradition, the bija is the root sound. And root sounds are from where every letter in the Sanskrit alphabet comes from. Sanskrit is said to be an experiential language, which means that every sound or every letter was experienced before it became something, before it started to donate, before it came to denote something. The evidence of that is simply in the way that sound or letters in Sanskrit alphabet are arranged. Simply put, the alphabet in Sanskrit begins with no contact, just vibration. You can experience this for yourself when you focus on where the sound is emanating from in your own body and utter each letter, or as I like to refer to it, each sound, and see for yourself. When you say ah, e, u, r, a, I, o, ow, there's really absolutely no contact. Even when you look at the anuswara, which is a nasal sound, or the visarga, there's no contact. Consonants then are divided again by where their sound emanates from. The guttural or the kantha, the kavarga, palatal or the talu or chavarga, cerebral or murdha or the tavarga, dental or danta or the tavarga, and the labial, oshtya or pavarga. This is followed by semi-vowels, yaralava, sibilants, shashasa, and so on. But when I sat in my Sanskrit language class, when I was in school and college, thoughts of physics and physiology of sound and its correlation to language were really very far from my mind. But in this moment now, looking back and experiencing all of these things, I seem to be able to see this correlation a lot more clearly. I can put all this into many words, but the easiest way to understand this correlation of sound and alphabet is actually by saying, trying, experiencing, experiential language. The magic of the language really comes into light when we understand that each word that we construct is split into syllables, and most of these syllables themselves are root sounds, which through experience have come to denote something just by the nature of their sound. Let's take the most well-known of all Sanskrit sounds, Om. Many of you already know that Om can be split into 3 syllables, A, U, and Ma. It's a perfectly circular sound and has all harmonics contained within it. In yogic practice, A is the sound that correlates with the Vishuddhi chakra, or the throat chakra. U is the sound that correlates with the Swadhisthana chakra, the sacral chakra, and Ma is the sound which correlates with the Mooladhara, or the root chakra. The A and U sounds emanate with no contact, and the Ma sound completes the circular nature of it with contact at the lips. If we study deeper, there's a deeper correlation between breath, sound, rhythm, language, and music. Without breath, we cannot create that vibration, and in turn, we cannot create sound. Just take a deep breath and say ah, and you will experience that vibration. And then on the contrary, try saying ah without taking a deep breath. Are you able to create the same kind of vibration? No. When we're chanting, do we think of pattern, sound, and breath, or does it all just come together? If you ask me, and this makes so much sense after listening to our first speaker today, mantra to me is code. It's a formula which encapsulates a code of vibration and breath. This quote tells us when to chant certain syllables which are related to different parts of our body, our chakras, and when to take a pause. This brings me again broadly to talk about the concept of chandas. Chandas is something that Sampath goes into great detail about in his book Chandovallari. But simply put, chandas is organized rhythmic structure or meter given to verses, and it's kind of the main code to writing poetry. Please note here that most of all ancient works that were written in Sanskrit were written in poetic form, not so much in prose. And so chandas is at the root of every piece of ancient literature. So now we have come from breath to sound to rhythm to language. Works when written with a rhythmic meter in mind lend themselves very naturally to music. And music uses breath, sound, rhythm, and language in equal measure to exist and be in the consciousness of people. To go a step further from music, when one speaks about healing, we cannot ignore the power of music in healing. Why? When you look at this progression from breath to sound to rhythm to music, when the addition of chanting texts written to rhythmic meter studied to cause you to breathe in a particular pattern by the use of short and long syllables and pauses, a lot of great mysteries that are contained in Sanskrit are revealed. So, when we think of relevance today in today's world, is none of this relevant? Is Sanskrit really a dead language? Especially when we study it deeply? In my mind, it's quite the contrary. It has never been more relevant than in this particular moment in time. So it brings me to leave you with a question. Is Sanskrit relevant only as literature? Or is it actually science disguised as literature to be more accessible in a simple and attractive way to us? Thank you.
That was amazing, Vasundhara. Thank you. Your take on Sanskrit and sound was really thought-provoking. And it's really important that the science behind this language is given equal importance in the formal education system. Thanks once again. I'd like to invite my next speaker, Dr. Dia Vandana Sharma. Dr. Dia Vandana Sharma is a public speaker, author, environmentalist, and philosopher. She works for the welfare of environment and animals. After spending a decade in the television industry, she completed her MA in Indian philosophy, PhD and Advaita Vedanta, Diploma Yoga and Pranayama Dhyana. She also went on to study the Bhagavad Gita and Vedanta at the Chinmaya Mission International. She was sent by the Government of India to World Philosophy Congress in 2018 to Beijing. This year, she won the Swami Pranavananda Book Award for the translation and commentary on Adi Shankaracharya's Prashnottar Ratnamalika. Thank you, Dr. Dia. Thank you for joining us.
Om Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagvat Padam Shankaram Loka Shankaram. Om Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaha Sarvebhyaha. I thank the Shri Aurobindo Center and Mishra sir for giving me an opportunity to come face to face on the occasion of the World Sanskrit Day and speak about this absolutely wonderful language. Well, we all know about Sanskrit. We have all heard about Sanskrit. Sanskrit is not just a language of religion and spirituality. On the contrary, Sanskrit is a perfect language which is aesthetically, scientifically, and logically embedded in perfection. And that is the reason why it has been known as Deva Bhasha. It is very unfortunate that people have misinterpreted Deva Bhasha. Due to the juvenile serials which come on television, people have kind of understood the meaning of Deva Bhasha as a language that exists between a group of deities who live in the skies, and that is why they kind of make fun of it. Well, it is extremely important to understand the deeper meaning of Deva Bhasha. The word Deva comes from the root Div, which also gives us the word divine and divinity. The guna, or the quality of Akash, which is Div, is Shabda, and that is why it is known as Shabda Gunatam Akasham. Now, the divinity that is spoken about Sanskrit is the all-pervasive divinity, that divinity which pervades all entities of the universe, the divinity which indwells all entities of the universe, and the divinity in which the entire universe is rooted. So that is the divinity which is being spoken about here, and Deva Bhasha is a metaphorical, a symbolic codification of the same. So it is not to be understood in the literal sense. And one has to kind of break free from this kind of a misconception. Again, the beauty of Sanskrit is that, in a very few words, you are able to express deep philosophies. You're able to express deep cosmologies, deep thoughts and ideas. So I'm going to just take two examples of the one from the Chandogya Upanishad, which says Ekoham Bahusyam. Now, in a very limited usage of words, it has expressed the entire creation. If I translate it from Ekoham Bahusyam to I am one and I become many, I'm using a number of words. And though the translation is very close from the original, but it certainly does not, communicate the same idea which Ekoham Bahusyam does. The same thing goes with the Eko Vasi Sarvabhuta Antaratma, which, expresses the entire philosophy of non-dualism. And if I kind of convert it or translate it from Eko Vasi Sarvabhuta Antaratma to he is one who indwells all beings of the world as the Atman or as the Brahman, it does not give the same meaning, and it does use a lot of redundant words. So the beauty of Sanskritam is that it communicates deep ideas in minimum words. There's another thing about Sanskritam that not only just Sanskritam, but in fact all traditions of Indian culture, whether it is music, whether it is art, whether it is poetry, whether it is Darshan Shastra, they accept the duality of the world as temporary, but their ultimate aim is realizing the non-duality that resides in the apparent names and forms. And that is what Samskritam also aims at. I'll give you an example of a word, dog. Dog, if I say dog, the first imagination that comes to our mind is an animal who has got 4 legs, a tilted tail, 2 ears, and 4 canine teeth, and that's about it. So we have a very outwardly description of the same. However, when Samskritam, gives almost 100 words for dog in Panini Ashtadhyayi, it describes not only the outer characteristics of a dog, but also dogness, which is universal dogness, which is the internal qualities or properties of the dog. Likewise, it does the same for trees and for all entities of the world. And so, you have words like Dirghanad, he who has perpetual sound for a dog. You have the word mandala. Mandala is normally, a round diagram or, a round shape. Even the Akash Mandalam is known as Mandalam. But here it is used for the dog because a dog moves in circles. You call him Ratri Jagar because he's awake throughout the night. You call him Sarma, the one with lucky feet. You call him Gram Singha because, he is supposed to be the lion of the village. And you call him Vakrapucha, which means the one who has a tilted or a bent tail. So if your child, tries to understand a dog or a tree or water or, fire from his textbooks, I think he'll be in a position to write about a page or a paragraph about that particular entity. But if he is in a position to memorize the 80 names or the 70 names or the 100 names of a certain entity, he will not only be understanding the external characteristics of that particular entity, he will also realize the internal universal properties of that entity, and he will be concluding the fact that behind all entities lies that one non-dual reality called the Brahman or the Atma. Because ultimately all realities of the world have got that one divine quality, and that will establish the child in self-sameness, coexistence, peace, harmony, non-violence, because he will see the self in all beings of the world, and he will see all beings of the world in the self. Now, there's another thing about Sanskrit which is very beautiful. Like English, it is not a static language. It is continuously growing. It is expanding. Panini in the Ashtadhyaya, gives root sounds, and therefore, you can create newer words. So you don't have to live with a particular object called ball is ball forever. You can give it so many other names. You don't have to, limit yourself to the word earth. You can give Bhumi many names. It is Vasudha. It is so many. It has got so many other names, and that is the beauty of this language. I was going through the Journal of American Sciences and Research, and I got to know that this neuroscientist called James Herzl, he came out with a study that when you learn Sanskrit, when you learn the mantras of Sanskritam, your brain expands, your memory expands. And he calls this, in this research paper, as the Samskritam Effect. Now, the Samskritam Effect is a combination of your studying Sanskritam, of your memorizing the mantras, and which leads to expansion of brain. So while the entire world was busy in writing books and safeguarding their knowledge in huge libraries, we had Indian tradition wherein through the Guru Shishya Parampara, a large body of text related to Darshan Shastra and related to Natya Shastra, related to Manusmriti, Vedanganas, so on and so forth, were transferred from the Guru to the Shishya. Is it not amazing that the students in India had immense capacity to imbibe all of this? How did this capacity build up? Well, the reason behind this is the Sanskrit effect. So Sanskritam not only leads to great memory and increasing your brain power, it also establishes you in ethics. It also establishes you in dharma. It also establishes you in morals, virtues, which are certainly not distinct from Sanskritam itself. I would also like to mention here that Atal Bihari Vajpayee, in his mission manuscript, had declared that there are 3 lakh unpublished Sanskritam works available in India. That is a huge amount of treasure of wisdom that we have. And it is so unfortunate that these have yet not been published. I mean, Sanskritam is one language which has touched every area of our life, from economy to philosophy, to you name it, and it is there. But it is very sad that, we still have 3 lakh unpublished work lying somewhere, which is not being explored by the wise of our society for the benefit of all beings of the universe. It has to be made use of, and the government must do something about it. Further, I would like to say that it is not for no reason that Sanskrit has been declared as mother of all languages. While English, which is not considered as a Vishishta Bhasha, there are many languages in the world which are considered as Vishishta Bhasha, which is Portuguese, Dutch, German, French, Russian, so on and so forth. And it gives me immense pride to state that, the roots of all these languages lie in Sanskritam. So I just found few words, and I'm just going to tell you about that, how they have been derived from Sanskritam. So the German word "iner" comes from the Sanskritam word "antara." Likewise, the French word avatara comes from the Sanskritam word avatar. The Arabic word nilofer and the Latin word neophan comes from the Sanskritam word nilpatal. And English, everybody knows. Thousands of words have been taken from the Sanskritam language. Just to name a few, cow comes from gau, tree comes from tree, grass comes from ghas, same comes from some, yog comes from yog, so on and so forth. Not only were the words taken from Sanskritam, but in fact, the names of certain countries also come from Sanskritam. So one of the countries called Iran comes from the Sanskritam comes from the Sanskritam word Aryan. And it is also said that Maharishi Panini was there in that region, that's what I have come to know from a Sanskritist. Likewise, Singapore comes from the combination of two Sanskritam words, Singhapuram, which means the city of lions. And similarly, we have Sri Lanka, we also have Bangladesh, which comes from the Mahabharata, it's mentioned in the Mahabharata, Bangadesham. So it's not only here that Sanskrit has had an effect on words and countries, but even the brands that we are wearing, the brands that we use in our day-to-day life have their root and origin in Sanskritam. So I have two examples here, which I chose. So the Sanskritam word Nikita or Nikit goes to Russia and becomes Mikita. It travels to Greece and it becomes Nika, which is the goddess of victory. And the same name originates as the brand Nike, which we all are aware of. Likewise, two Sanskritam words, the lupta, which is known as, translated as extinct or hidden in Sanskritam, and means lupta, or lupta means hidden or extinct. And the word hamsa, which is a beautiful bird in India, which also is a symbol of wisdom, ultimate reality, called Brahman or Atman, and is associated with the goddess of wisdom, Saraswati, comes together in order to form the brand Lufthansa. So Lufthansa or Lufthansa, the philosophy that is behind it is that every entity in the world has the Hamsa or the wisdom or the Brahman or the Atman hiding within these koshas. And the one who realizes it becomes a Paramahansa. So that is a beautiful philosophy. So you can see how Sanskritam also becomes a cause, a mother of certain brands that we have in India, in the world. I'm sorry. Now, it is a very sad state of affairs that, in India, this language has been ignored completely. In India, the moment, the government tries to promote this language from class 1 to, let's say, the bachelor's, and tries to make it a compulsory language, there is immense amount of refutation from people of all faiths and all systems. Why? Because this language has been labeled as a language of the Hindus. It has been labeled as a language, even in the Hindus, it is meant only for Karma Kanda. However, throughout the world, whether you talk about Germany or you talk about America or you talk about Vienna, everybody is spending a bomb on Sanskritam for the sake of research and development and introducing it as a part of the entire education system. In fact, I was reading a couplet the other day that the University of Heidelberg in Germany, they were flabbergasted. Why? Because they received so many applications and there were so many willing people around the world who wanted to study Sanskrit that they had no seats available for the same. And it is not only with Germany, who proudly state that their roots are Aryan and they belong to the Sanskritam tradition, but there are other universities around the world, like the Harvard University, the London University, the Frankfurt University, the University of Vienna, so on and so forth. List is absolutely unending. Sadly, whenever we have spoken about introducing Sanskritam in India, there has been it has not been welcomed by people of other faith. Now, I'm going to tell you, I was reading this book by a scholar called Said Suleiman Nadwi, and he writes a beautiful book called Arbo Hinde Taluka, in which he clearly states that 90% of the Quran, the words used in Quran, have been picked up by Sanskritam. I'm going to give you a reference of two references from the Quran Sharif. One is verse 76.5, where the word kafur is used with the connotation of fragrance. And it, Suleiman Sahab clearly states that it has been picked up from the Sanskritam word kapur. Likewise, there's another word in Quran which means faith, and it is ashadaha, which comes from the Sanskritam word shraddha. So you can see the kind of similarity. So I personally feel that people don't really want that people should go ahead and study Sanskritam. The reason is that if they do study, they'll realize that there lies unity in diversity. And if that happens, then a lot of political people would lose their job. However, I would conclude by saying that it is extremely important to know the self, and in order to know the self, you need to know your roots. And the moment you know your roots, you will realize the treasure that lies there. The best gift that you can give to the coming generation is the treasure of wisdom. And just before I leave, I would just like to say, Sarala Bhasha, Sarasa Bhasha, Madhura Bhasha, Mridula Bhasha, Deva Bhasha, Veda Bhasha, Samskritam. Jaitu Bharatam, Jaitu Sanskritam.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dia, touching over such interesting aspects about the Sanskrit language, like the crispness, yet the vastness on how each word really describes a certain quality of the word. And it's brilliant that we can trace back popular brands like Nike to Sanskrit roots. And your talk really, I think, would make rethink many people who think of Sanskrit as a dead language. Thank you once again. I'd like to introduce now Dr. Sampadanand Mishra. Dr. Mishra is a Sanskrit scholar and a teacher. His approach to teaching Sanskrit is modern and practical, and yet still carries the essence and richness of our culture. He is the director of Sri Aurobindo Foundation for Indian Culture and was awarded the President's Award in 2012 by Pratibha Patil. Dr. Mishra is also a mentor to Language Curry and has been a guiding force for the team since the start. Welcome, Dr. Mishra.
Namah sarvebhya. So Samskrita Divasasya Shubhashaya. So we really had some brilliant expositions and brilliant deliberations on the different aspects of Sanskritam by our previous speakers, Shashikantji, Preeti, Vasundhara, and Vandana. So all of them, they spoke from different angle, the different aspects of the language. For me, Sanskritam has been an integral part of my life right from the beginning, right from my childhood. But I'm more looking for those materials in Sanskritam which can inspire, not only can inspire others, those are the materials which have inspired me in presenting Sanskritam or having a deeper understanding of Sanskritam from a very practical and from a very deeper spiritual point of view, yogic point of view. So that is why my approach has always been a yogic approach towards Sanskritam. So every aspect of Sanskritam that one explores, or whatever aspect one explores, there one finds limitless materials. There is no end to the wonders of this language, whether one is looking at it from the phonetics point of view, from the syntax point of view, from the semantics point of view, from the point of view of its connection with other languages of the world, not just of India, from the literature point of view, from the thought content point of view. Every aspect of it has much things to contribute towards, I put it, towards the progressive evolution of the humanity. It's a language through which India has been giving expression to its soul, to its much vitality, its dynamism. And merely linking Sanskritam with religious or ritualistic aspects, merely linking it with the past, merely linking it with some community, it doesn't give a picture of the entire language. Rather, it shows our own narrowness and meanness, that we have not been able to understand the deeper depths or the higher heights of this language. Practically, it helps in various aspects of our life. Whether one takes the wise sayings, how these inspired words of the seers and sages, they have a tremendous impact on our day-to-day life. The simple subhashitas that we learned, they became our guiding lamp on the way. Constantly, or whenever we face situations in life, those difficult situations, or any problem, or any dilemma, so those are the sayings of the seers and sages which keep coming to the front and help us what should be our attitude in a particular situation, what should we do in life. So Sanskritam is very much, it's a life transforming language. It has immense transformative power. Only one has to keep oneself open to it, not asking too many unnecessary questions. Like Vasundhara pointed out that immediately, like today you go to the social media, the moment the same thing happens, like when we put something really beautiful about Sanskritam either on Twitter or Facebook, there are a lot of unhappy souls there, unhappy and ignorant souls. We should be more compassionate towards them. So immediately they will put, like Vasundhara put it very rightly, that she felt sorry about the person, that someday she should be illumined about, and so much of ignorance about one's own culture, about one's own tradition, about I mean, these are the unhappy souls. So they don't know, they don't have any life's purpose. They don't know why they have come to this world. They're just unhappy, wandering, bhatakta hua, souls. So one day, I think Sanskritam will come back to help them changing their mindset, and I'm at least like hopeful about it. So linking it with like what is the relevance of this language in this modern world, I say that like why are we thinking just in this time? Sanskritam is such a language that it has its relevance, it had its relevance, it has its relevance, and it will maintain its relevance, it will have its relevance forever, for ages together. because it's a language which is eternal, universal language, a planetary language. So from it can be viewed from the most materialistic point of view up to the deeper spiritual point of view. So from any point of, from any stand that we evaluate this language, it will have, like, one will get convinced, one will have this feeling that here is a brilliant language. And it is a sad fact that in India, our children, the young generation, they grow by being ignorant about such a treasure. In education system, yes, there are certain changes which are coming up, but are the changes going to bring any huge impact? No, because at the policy level also, what is being done is just a consolation, there is not real justice, has not been given to Sanskritam and the Indian culture, its heritage. And I'm talking especially about this language. So we don't need just a consolation. There must be a radical change, a complete paradigm shift, if we really want to gain maximum from this language. And this language alone has the power to uplift, to uplift India. I mean, India has always been this Vishwa Guru. I mean, we say that India should become the Vishwa Guru, but India is Vishwa Guru. It has all etad desha prasutasya sakashadagra janmanaha swam swam charitram shiksheran prathivyam sarvamanavaha. So how ancient is this verse? It says that the whole world, the people of the whole world, rest of the world will learn their own charitra, the good charitra, from the people who are born here. So even to take birth on this land is a great virtue. It's a great one should feel fortunate enough to be born in India. And here we are talking about the very language of this nation. India not only has been contributing in this language, using this language as a medium of expression, or using this language as a medium to give expression to different knowledge system, whether one talks about the yoga, Ayurveda, or any kind of literature or the scientific literature, but the real importance and practical value of Sanskritam lies in the fact that how it trains the mind, what kind of impact that it has on the human consciousness. When we contemplate purely on the phonetic part of it, we see the purity of the vibration of the sound, Sanskrit sound, the rhythmic aspect of it, the melody, the musicality of it. So what kind of impact it has on our nervous system, what kind of impact it has on the most physical body. Also, like how it is impacting our emotional and sensational being, how it is bringing clarity into the mental level of consciousness. So it is not merely a language like other languages. It is not merely a language, and when we are approaching Sanskritam to learn it, so there also the approach must be not just to learn it as a language, but we must approach it from a different point of view, from a higher point of view, that it is much more than a language. What the other languages cannot do, what impact the other languages cannot make, unless and until those languages are raised by someone, by some rishi, by some higher being. Till then, the Sanskritam is one of the, Sanskritam is the best language that is available to us, which will have a direct impact on our consciousness, and which will not only have the impact, but which will help us in our evolutionary journey. There is a beautiful, but here one more thing which I want to say from a very deeper yogic spiritual point of view. This is something what fascinates me when we read, say, Patanjali's Mahabhashya, or when we read Panini's Ashtadhyayi. Patanjali in his Mahabhashya says a very beautiful thing. So he says, I mean, there is a beautiful dialogue that you can see, because there is Purva Paksha and the Uttar Paksha and the Siddhanta Paksha. The disciple asks and the Guru answers, although he is the same person playing the different roles. So there is a statement in Patanjali's Mahabhashya, which is a commentary on Panini's Ashtadhyayi, which says, Eka Shabda Samyak Jnata Suprayukta Swarge Lokecha Kamadhuk Bhavati. It means that one word, when it is learnt properly and used properly means consciously, it will yield its result here and hereafter. Wherever, like this soul can manifest in whatever condition, in whatever place, so it will yield, it will have its impact. And Patanjali, a rishi like Patanjali says, Ekas Shabda. One doesn't even need to know so many words, the entire Shastra, but one word. But know it perfectly. It is not just merely, not just learning the language or the vocabularies or certain Shastras, but to know it consciously and deeply. Ekas Shabda, just one word. Knowing it, feeling it, and understanding the deeper fundamental experiences associated with that sound, coming in contact with the whole holistic experience that the word carries. So one feels uplifted, one feels enlightened, and as if a truth has been revealed, certain aspect of the truth has been revealed too. And then the point is, this revelation can create some, exalted feeling. One feels happy, that state of eureka, that yes, I got it. I am entering into some kind of, state, different state. But that truth has to be lived. That truth has to be lived properly. Now, therefore, Patanjali, I can give you one example, like how this one word can bring a change, can give us a deeper understanding, to our, uh, to help us realizing the truth behind it. Say, for example, take someone's name. Someone's name is something. We take, say, for example, the name of, say someone's name is Karuna Sagara. Karuna Sagara. Karuna means compassion, kindness, and Sagara is the ocean. So the meaning of this name is one who is the ocean of the treasure trove of Karuna, compassion. Now, just imagine if that person carrying this name understands this meaning and organizes every aspect of his life around this truth, because that name, very name, the meaning of his very name is the very purpose of his life, that he is the Karuna Sagara, he is the ocean of Karuna, ocean of compassion. So now it will definitely bring a change in the character of that person. If he is organizing every aspect of his life around this truth and then living the truth behind his name. So that one word can become a life changer. So this way, when we try to understand each and every word in Sanskritam is a language where each and every word is conscious of its own history. Not only that it is conscious of its own history, it can also help discovering the history of other languages, not only other languages, but it can help us discovering the fundamental experiences of humanity. And when we contemplate on the fundamental root sounds and the fundamental experiences associated with the root sounds, then this language becomes relevant forever. Becomes relevant forever. So this is where lies the secret of this language, the power of this language. And another thing is that this language, we call it as sculpted to perfection. Actually, there is no end to perfection, but it keeps perfecting itself because it has a mechanism of its own that it keeps perfecting itself. It keeps recreating itself, rejuvenating itself. Nothing, no force, no energy can bring any harm to this language. That's the strength and that's the power of this language. That nothing in the world can do any harm to this language. However, people try it because they cannot, because it has a different mechanism, because it operates at a different level, and it is completely in harmony with the laws of the nature. As nature cannot be destroyed, so this language cannot be destroyed because it is absolutely in harmony with the laws and processes of the nature. It's an organically grown language that makes it relevant forever. That makes it relevant forever. Now, coming to the sustenance and the propagation and promotion of this language, there have been tremendous amount of effort in the last 10 years, we can say. What has happened in the field of Sanskrit was never there before, 10 years, 10, 20 years before. So slowly there is this acceptance for this language. People are slowly realizing the value of it, importance of it. People are trying to give it to their children. Many people feel even like what they have missed in their education, their children should not miss. So they make effort to bring it to the children. They try to what do you call, learn by themselves and teach their children. There have been tremendous amount of effort using technology, how this language can be brought to the youth of India, because the youth is completely open to the technology part. And in this modern world, when we are trying to propagate or promote using the digital platform, there are, of course, limitations, but that is the future. There lies the future. So technology and Sanskritam, they have to go hand in hand. Then only we can, bring Sanskrit to a wider platform and then connect it with the youth of India and youth of the entire world, who are open to India, open to the Indian culture, Indian ideas, the Sanatana Dharma. So that's how the technology will help us immensely in doing that work, in achieving that work. So keeping that in mind, a little bit of my personal contribution that I have been, doing it, that in uh, uh, 2013, I initiated this whole platform called Divya Vani Sanskrit Radio. Divya Vani Sanskrit Radio, which is the world's first ever 24 by 7 radio, which has a reach in almost 160 countries. On a daily basis, people access it, learn it, and all those who are viewing this also can access to it. And then see, 24 hours, anytime you switch on, you will find some program in pure Sanskritam. No other language is used in this platform. reconnecting the language to the children, because we need to create a completely different generation. So children have to learn this language, and to bring it and connect it to the children, the teaching pattern also has to change. We cannot teach the children, today's children or today's youth, Sanskritam the way we were taught. So a radical change has to come at the pedagogy level, at the curriculum, preparation of the textbook, and the teaching methodology. So the innovation aspect in language teaching, especially Sanskrit teaching, is a completely missing in our country. There has not been a proper teachers training, innovative teachers training program, centralized teachers training program, and it is sad that we have thousands and thousands of teachers, but there is no proper teachers training program. By teachers training program, I do not mean that some B.Ed program and some practical, or how do you teach the syllabus, how do you make lesson plans, and how do you do classroom demonstration or anything. But by teachers training means like a deeper understanding of why one is a teacher, and then that's again linking to the Sanskrit teaching, and then what kind of innovative ways that a teacher can have, bringing Sanskrit in a very different, engaging and interesting way to sustain the interest of the children, of the youth, or the learners, or the seekers, and then teach Sanskritam from a very different point of view. So then it has certain impact. It has certain impact on the learners. So from that point of view, also, like, my little effort that here, the host Language Curry itself has come out with this application called Language Curry apps. So it's a very engaging way of, anyone who is acquainted with technology will agree with me that you see what kind of pedagogy we have adopted in creating this application, and then bringing Sanskrit teaching to every one of you who is willing to learn Sanskritam through application, that you find here a very interesting, innovative way of learning Sanskrit. So the same way that when we come to the curriculum aspect, you can see the kind of Devabhasha books that we have created at Set MR Jaipuriya School. So, which is perhaps the one and only mainstream schools with the ICSE board, which has Sanskritam right from the preschool to class 8 and compulsorily. So there anyone can visit the school and then find that little children are communicating in Sanskrit. So the teachers do not speak, the Sanskrit teachers communicate in Sanskrit. So that's a beautiful environment which has been created by the whole aspiration of the founders of the management of that school. So these are a little small efforts at also my Sri Aurobindo Foundation for Indian Culture. We have been trying through the Samskrita Bala Sahitya Parishad, creating lots of qualitative, innovative children's literature using simple Sanskrit, through stories, through rhyming songs, and through vocabulary building books and games and activities. So how do we bring Sanskritam to a larger section, and especially to the youth and the children? So in this manner, like, if many individuals who are working for it, and then many organizations who are working towards this, if we collaborate, we come harmoniously, then we can do a lot of work taking Sanskrit to a greater height. And I'm very, very happy that this uh, event is happening on a very auspicious day. Today is Raksha Bandhan. This is in our parampara, it is the day of initiation, and it is the Raksha Bandhan day. It is the Shravana Purnima, and it was the right thing which was decided to have the Samskrita Vishwa Samskrita Divasa, the World Sanskrit Day, on this day. So, and hundreds of programs, thousands of programs are taking place during this 1 week. So get connected with all kinds of programs wherever you all have interest. So the point is to get connected with Sanskrit. Whether this organization does, that organization does, this person does, that person does, it doesn't matter. But our purpose should be Sanskritam. So getting connected with Sanskritam means getting connected with the very soul of Bharata. Getting connected with Sanskritam also means getting connected with the language of our own soul. Sanskritam has immense power to create that self-awareness and lead us towards the self-realization, because it's a language of self-realization, a language of freedom, a language of mantra, a language of consciousness, and a language which has immense transformative power to bring a radical change in human consciousness, leading the humanity on its evolutionary journey. With these words, I say Dhanyavada to all of you, and let's be in touch, with Sanskritam. That's the sole purpose. That should be the one purpose of all of us coming together. Dhanyavada.
Dhanyawada, Dr. Mishra. You're truly helping bring the Sanskrit revolution and breaking the stereotypes around it. Sanskrit cannot be linked only to religion, and there is so much more. And under your guidance, Language Curry is on a mission to promote Sanskrit as a beautiful and a rich language first. Again, thank you to all the panelists, Dr. Shashikant Joshi, Preeti Opala, Vasundhara Das, Dr. Dia Vandana, and Dr. Mishra. The session was truly enriching, and all thanks to your wisdom and knowledge. We'll just wait for a few minutes. If anybody who's watching us live has any questions, please do write on the comment box, and we will take those questions. We'll wait for 1 minute if there are any questions. If not, then you can always write to us at info@languagecurry.com. Shashiji, there's a question for you, I think, or a comment.
What is it? Okay, so I think Ram Sarup Nayakji was mentioning that at least somebody should be speaking in Sanskrit or Hindi. And I already replied that this being online and people with different language capabilities will be there. Within India itself, there are a lot of mother tongues. So if Sanskrit was a language in common spoken use, we might not even be having this session. Right? So the very reason we are having this is to promote the language. So it is important to and practical to use the most common language at the time to communicate. So English is not bad. It's a wonderful communication tool internationally. There's nothing wrong, right? I mean, it's not that one should only speak Sanskrit and nothing else. Even during the time of Panini, there were other languages also, right? So the scholar would be talking in Sanskrit in the Shastrat at the court, but will come home and talk to his wife and kids in a dialect or an Apabhransh, right? So I think that should not be a point to worry that this one was conducted in English for wider usage.
Yes, thank you, Shashiji. Dr. Mishra, I think you can answer Chitranjan Das' question on how we can spread Sanskrit in a village level. How can Sanskrit be spread at the village level? That's his question.
Yeah, I think it is very much necessary because 65 to 70% of India is rural. And we should have, instead of being focused, if we truly want the Sanskritam to, rise, we should target the rural areas, because 65 to 70% of India, rural area. So how do we support opening the schools, in the government schools also? And as I said, that it is not just, by introducing Sanskrit that we can create interest or do justice to Sanskrit. So I have spoken about it in different platforms, if we can enrich the regional languages of the Bharat, Sanskrit will automatically be promoted. So which has not been happening. Why people in India have aversion for Sanskrit or any kind of not that much interest, because our own languages are not taught properly. There's no interest in the language at all. And I tell you, yesterday, this new education policy which is spread that, okay, regional languages have been given importance and all this. It's not something new. When we studied our science books in Odia medium. I studied up to class 10 through Odia medium. And beautiful scientific terminologies in my own language. And that system of learning through the regional languages created deeper sense for my own state, for my own language or Sanskritam. It deepened the understanding of Sanskritam. Because during that time also, if anyone asks what is microscope in Sanskritam, I would say it while like in class 9 or class 10, because in science book of ours which was in Odia medium, there was this word that it is not Sukshma Darshanam, because that's the word which is used in most places. So that's why I said the scientific terminologies which are created in Odisha textbooks are very, very befitting. Now I give this example that Sukshma Darshanam has a little philosophical touch, like a subtle vision. It doesn't give the expression, the sense of that microscope. And what word we studied? We studied Anu Vikshanam. Anu is micro, and Vikshanam, Ikshanam itself has a sense of penetrated seeing, very concentrated seeing, and we further adds to it, emphasizes it. Anu Vikshanam. And this is that word I have been carrying with me all the times. And I studied it in Odia. I just add to it, and it's a Sanskritam word. I can use it. I used for laboratory the Prayogashala. We learned it in class 8, the Prayogashala. So that's how we kept alive the Sanskrit language through our regional languages. So in the villages also, instead of sending children or giving importance that English should be taught, so every state should take care of giving maximum importance to the language of that state. Then Sanskritam will be definitely promoted. Of course, if we can add Sanskritam and give little more emphasis on it, so then the history of that language also, because Sanskrit and the regional languages, they will keep enriching each other. They will flourish together, not in isolation. So that's what we have to do, that giving importance to the regional language and then adding Sanskritam to it and allowing both of them to flourish together.
Thank you. I think Ajay ji has touched on a topic of teacher's salary, but that's, I think, something to be discussed. It's more of a government policy,
Yes.
and of course, teachers are underpaid, and we hope that the new policies can help improve that, because it's always a motivation to be well rewarded.
If anyone of us, has any comment on whatever we have discussed on the questions, you are free to do that also. Dia,
I didn't see a question though, apart from the two that we already discussed.
Even on the same question.
So I would like to add, if others still need some time to gather their thoughts. So in Bhagavat Puran, when Narad meets Bhakti, and I'll cut the story short. So he talks about what happens in Kali Yuga. And one of the things he says is that people, they spend all their waking hours in earning livelihood, and they don't have any time to think about the Sat. Sat Chintan is not there. And Sat could be whether it is good thoughts, higher thoughts, God, philosophy, whatever you can say. Anything beyond livelihood. And today we see that everything is geared towards livelihood only. I mean, needs are important. I'm not denying that. It should be, everybody should be able to put the bread on the table, so to speak. But only livelihood. That's it. So that's why our languages are also suffering, no matter which language. Nobody's taking languages seriously except English. And I'm very sorry to say that most of the people in India, their English is also bad. Those who claim that English is the best language, they can have great accent, but if you really pose them some grammar stuff or some language depth of the language, they fail. So they're just not taking it seriously, and because of that, their one side of the brain does not develop. It also impacts in science. I mean, they don't realize it, but it impacts in science or any other field that they go in, whether it is law or policy making or anything. I mean, at least some Indian literature, if you pick the real traditional Indian literature, you get an insight into the life and history of the people themselves. So, but it takes all to make all.
It's about belonging, right? It's about identity.
Yes.
It's about who are you first, and how do you connect to where you come from. And then we can move forward and move ahead and make change. But before we stand on a pedestal and try to make change, first, who are we?
Right.
What's our identity?
Perfect. Thank you. I think we've had a good round of questions, and thank you, everybody. This is a over 2 hour long live. So, but time really just flies through. While we're doing these live sessions especially with brilliant minds like all of you guys. So, thank you, everybody. And like Sampath sir always says, Punar Darshanaya, and we really look forward to interacting with you again.
Sure.
Punar Darshanaya.